Have you ever noticed that many men considered nice guys seem to have more difficulty in relationships than those who appear less virtuous? If you've ever wondered why this happens, know that you're not alone, and what's most surprising is that Aristotle, over 2,000 years ago, already had profound insights about this paradox that still puzzles many people today. Let's begin with a crucial distinction that Aristotle made, which can completely change your perspective on what it means to be a virtuous man. For Aristotle, virtue wasn't simply being nice or avoiding conflicts. Virtue, or erotic in Greek, meant excellence, the full realization of human potential. It's like the difference between a seed that stays stored in a drawer and one that transforms into a leafy tree. Both are seeds, but only one has realized its potential. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Aristotle developed the concept of the golden mean, the idea that virtue lies in the balance between two extremes. For example, courage is the mean between cowardice and rashness. But look, many men who consider themselves virtuous are actually practicing what Aristotle would call vice by deficiency. They're not courageous. They're excessively passive. They're not generous. They're subservient. They're not kind. They're just incapable of setting boundaries. Think with me. When a man avoids any and all conflict, agrees with everything, never expresses his own opinions or desires, is this really virtue? Aristotle would say no. This is character deficiency, lack of thumos, the Greek word meaning spirit, vigor, passion for life. The philosopher believed that a truly virtuous man needs to have this inner fire, this capacity to fight for what he believes in, even when it means disagreeing or creating tension. I'll give you a practical example that Aristotle would certainly recognize. Imagine two men interested in the same woman. The first always agrees with everything she says, never expresses a contrary opinion, is always available, never says no. The second has his own opinions, sometimes disagrees respectfully, has his own commitments and priorities, establishes clear boundaries. Which of the two is demonstrating true Aristotelian virtue? The second, clearly. Aristotle had a fascinating concept called megalopsychia, literally greatness of soul, or magnanimity. The magnanimous man, according to him, knows his own worth and doesn't diminish himself. He's aware of his qualities and doesn't pretend false modesty. This might sound like arrogance to our modern ears, but Aristotle was pointing to something profound. True virtue includes self-respect and adequate recognition of one's own value. See how this applies to relationships. Many nice guys believe that extreme humility and self-deprecation are virtues. They constantly put themselves in second place, minimize their achievements, apologize for existing. Aristotle would say this isn't virtue, it's a vice. The virtuous man is aware of his value and expresses it appropriately, without arrogance, but also without false modesty. Another crucial Aristotelian concept here is energia, activity, actualization, energy in action. For Aristotle, virtue isn't passive, it's active. It's not enough to have good intentions or avoid doing evil. True virtue manifests in action, in achievement, in impact on the world. The man who stands still, who doesn't take initiative, who waits for things to happen, isn't practicing Aristotelian virtue. Aristotle also spoke about different types of friendship and love. He identified three types: friendship for pleasure, for utility, and for virtue. Interestingly, he noted that friendships based on virtue are the most lasting, but he also recognized that they require equality between the parties. When a man constantly places himself in an inferior position, when he doesn't see himself as an equal, he makes this higher type of relationship impossible. Now, here's a profound insight from Aristotle that many ignore. He understood that different aspects of human nature sometimes conflict. What is philosophically virtuous isn't always what sparks attraction. He recognized that we are complex beings with rational, emotional, and instinctive dimensions. The error of many virtuous men is ignoring these other dimensions, focusing only on what they consider morally correct. Aristotle highly valued the concept of phronesis, practical wisdom. It's not enough to know the theory of virtue, one must know how to apply it in the real world. The man with phronesis understands context, reads situations, knows when to be firm and when to yield. Many nice guys lack this practical wisdom. They apply rules rigidly without considering context. A classic example, the man who insists on paying all bills not out of genuine generosity, but from a rigid rule that men should pay. Or the one who never takes the initiative for a kiss because virtuous men wait for explicit permission for everything. Aristotle would say this is lack of phronesis, of wisdom, to navigate the complexities of human interactions. The Aristotelian concept of eudaimonia, human flourishing, full life, is also relevant here. For Aristotle, the goal of life isn't simply to be moral, but to live fully, to realize our potential. A man who constantly restricts himself, who doesn't allow himself to experience the full range of human experiences, isn't achieving eudaimonia. Aristotle also distinguished between vices of excess and deficiency. It's fascinating how many modern men have fallen into the trap of thinking that avoiding all vices of excess automatically makes them virtuous. But Aristotle was clear, you can be vicious by being too little courageous, just as by being too rash. You can sin by being too submissive, just as by being a tyrant. There's a passage where Aristotle discusses the importance of kairos, the opportune moment. Virtue isn't just doing the right thing, but doing it at the right time, in the right measure, in the right way. Many nice guys fail in this temporal aspect. They express interest when it's too late, take initiative when the moment has passed, demonstrate assertiveness only after losing opportunities. The philosopher also understood that excellence, arete, develops through practice. You don't become courageous by avoiding all situations that require courage. You don't develop charisma by always staying silent. You don't learn to lead by always following. Many virtuous men avoid precisely the experiences that would help them develop true excellence. Aristotle made an important distinction between moral and intellectual virtues. Many men focus excessively on moral virtues, being honest, just, temperate, forgetting intellectual virtues like wisdom, practical intelligence, insight. In the context of relationships, intellectual virtues are often more important for creating attraction and connection, something Aristotle would probably find fascinating in our era. Many men confuse social conformity with virtue. They follow all rules, meet all expectations, never cause discomfort. But Aristotle was clear that sometimes virtue requires going against conventions, defending unpopular principles, causing necessary discomfort. The concept of akrasia, weakness, of will, is also relevant. Aristotle recognized that knowing what's right isn't enough. One needs willpower to act. Many virtuous men suffer from akrasia in relationships. They know they should be more assertive, more authentic, more courageous, but they lack the willpower to change established patterns. Aristotle also discussed the importance of autarkia, self-sufficiency. The virtuous man doesn't depend excessively on others for his happiness or sense of worth. He's complete in himself. Contrast this with the behavior of many nice guys who derive all their value from female approval, who completely mold their personality to please. It's important to understand that Aristotle wasn't suggesting men be cruel or insensitive. Aristotelian, virtue includes kindness, generosity, justice. But these qualities must come from strength, not weakness. The generosity of the strong is very different from the subservience of the weak. The gentleness of the confident is very different from the passivity of the insecure. The paradox we're exploring, why women often reject apparently virtuous men. Makes perfect sense through the Aristotelian lens. These men aren't demonstrating true virtue, but its distorted shadow. They lack thumos, megalopsychia, energia. They practice vices of deficiency, not true virtues. Aristotle would probably say that the path to resolving this paradox isn't abandoning virtue, but understanding it correctly. True virtue is strong, active, balanced. It includes courage, self-assertion, clear boundaries. It requires practical wisdom to navigate complex situations. It demands authenticity and self-respect. The final lesson is profound. Many men are trapped in a superficial and distorted understanding of what it means to be virtuous. They confuse weakness with goodness, passivity with respect, submission with love. Aristotle shows us that true virtue is much more complex, much more attractive, much more powerful than this modern caricature. If you identified with something we discussed today, the good news is that true virtue can be developed, as Aristotle taught. We become virtuous by practicing virtuous acts. Start small, express a genuine opinion, establish a clear boundary, take an initiative. With time and practice, you can develop true Aristotelian excellence and perhaps discover that the nice guys paradox isn't a paradox after all, but a fundamental confusion about what it really means to be a virtuous man. There's a deep tension in Aristotle's philosophy that few modern commentators are willing to openly discuss: the disconnect between what is morally virtuous and what awakens desire and attraction. Let's explore this more provocative dimension of Aristotelian thought, something that can completely transform your understanding of relationships and human nature. Aristotle had a fascinating concept called energeia: energy, activity, actualization. For him, true existence wasn't in potential, but in the realization of that potential. A seed has the potential to be a tree, but only exists fully when it's growing, flourishing, bearing fruit. Similarly, a man only manifests true virtue when he's in action, when his energy is flowing, when he's accomplishing things in the world. Now, think with me about what this means for attraction. Women in general are attracted to men who demonstrate energia, men in motion, achieving, building, impacting the world around them. The contemplative, passive man who only thinks about virtue but doesn't actively manifest it lacks this magnetic quality that Aristotle identified as essential. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Aristotle spoke about megalopsychia, literally greatness of soul or magnanimity. The magnanimous man, according to him, is aware of his own worth and isn't ashamed of it. He knows he's worthy of great things and acts accordingly. To our modern ears, this might sound like arrogance, but Aristotle was pointing to something profound about the nature of attraction. See, the truly magnanimous man isn't arrogant in the vulgar sense. He simply possesses what Aristotle would call adequate self-knowledge. He doesn't falsely diminish himself nor unduly aggrandize himself. He occupies exactly the space that's due to him in the world. And this quality, this authentic, unapologetic presence, is deeply attractive. Aristotle also recognized different types of pleasure and desire. He distinguished between necessary pleasures, like food and sex, and unnecessary pleasures, like honor and recognition. Fascinatingly, he noted that human beings are unique in their capacity to desire the infinite. Unlike animals, we're never completely satisfied. This observation has profound implications for understanding the dynamics of attraction. Human desire, according to Aristotle, doesn't seek only physical satisfaction. It seeks excellence, greatness, transcendence. When a woman rejects a nice guy, she's often responding to a deep intuition that he doesn't offer this element of transcendence, of possibility for growth, of journey toward excellence. Aristotle made a crucial distinction between the contemplative life and the active life. Although he considered philosophical contemplation as the supreme good, He recognized that most people find satisfaction and meaning in the active life, in accomplishing things, in competing, in conquering. And here's the crucial point. Erotic attraction generally responds more strongly to the virtues of the active life than to those of the contemplative life. The Aristotelian concept of potency versus act is also relevant here. Many virtuous men live perpetually in the realm of potency. They have potential to be courageous, strong, decisive, but rarely actualize this potential. They're like athletes who train eternally but never compete. Aristotle would understand why this doesn't awaken desire. Desire responds to act, not to potential. Let's talk about something Aristotle observed, but many prefer to ignore: the relationship between power and attraction. For Aristotle, true virtue includes a form of power over oneself, certainly, but also the power to influence the world, to lead others, to cause changes. The truly virtuous man isn't powerless. He has capacity for effective action in the world. Aristotle also discussed the concept of natural versus conventional. He recognized that some things are right or wrong by nature, while others are determined by social convention. Many virtuous men confuse modern social conventions with natural virtue. They follow rules that are merely conventional, as if they were immutable natural laws. For example, the idea that a virtuous man should always wait for the woman to take initiative is a modern convention, not a natural truth. Aristotle would probably find this absurd, contrary to the complementary nature of the sexes that he observed in the natural world. The philosopher also understood that different virtues are appropriate for different contexts and relationships. The virtue appropriate for a philosopher in contemplation isn't the same as that appropriate for a lover. Many men fail to make this distinction, applying contemplative virtues in contexts that require more active and assertive virtues. Aristotle had profound insights about the nature of pleasure and its relationship to virtue. He wasn't a hedonist, but he also didn't reject pleasure. For him, appropriate pleasure naturally accompanies virtuous activity. The problem arises when virtuous men completely reject the dimension of pleasure, creating an arid, lifeless virtue that repels instead of attracts. It's fascinating how Aristotle anticipated many modern discoveries about evolutionary psychology. He observed patterns in nature and human behavior that suggested certain universal tendencies. For example, he noted that in many species, including humans, females are attracted to demonstrations of excellence, strength, and capacity for protection and provision. The concept of thumos, spirit, courage, vigors, is crucial here. Aristotle saw thumos as an essential part of the human soul, especially the masculine soul. It's the element that drives us to compete, to fight, to assert ourselves in the world. Many modern men have completely suppressed their thumos in the name of a misunderstood virtue. Aristotle also spoke about the importance of kalos kagatos, the beautiful and good, the ideal of the Greek gentleman. This concept united moral excellence with physical and social excellence. The truly virtuous man wasn't just morally good, he was also physically capable, socially competent, aesthetically refined. The tension between philosophical virtue and erotic attraction appears clearly when Aristotle discusses the philosopher's life. He recognizes that the contemplative philosopher can achieve the supreme good, but also notes that this lifestyle can be lonely and not particularly attractive in the erotic sense. It's a rare intellectual honesty. Aristotle understood that sexual desire isn't merely physical, but is interwoven with higher aspirations. When he says that man naturally desires to know, he's talking about an impulse that permeates all aspects of human life, including sexuality. Desire seeks not just pleasure, but meaning, transcendence, union with something greater. The concept of mimesis, imitation, is also relevant. Aristotle noted that we learn and develop through imitation of excellent models. In the context of relationships, women often seek men who represent a model of excellence they can admire and with whom they can grow. It's important to understand that Aristotle wasn't suggesting men become brutes or abandon moral virtue. On the contrary, he was pointing to a more complete and integrated understanding of virtue, one that includes strength, assertiveness, thumos, megalopsychia, energia, along with kindness, justice, and wisdom. The question of timing, kairos, is crucial here too. Aristotle understood that there's a time for everything. There are moments to be gentle and moments to be firm, moments to contemplate and moments to act. The truly virtuous man has the wisdom to recognize which moment requires which response. Aristotle also discussed the importance of hexis, a compound habit, or disposition. Virtue isn't an isolated act, but a disposition developed through repeated practice. Similarly, attractiveness doesn't come from isolated gestures, but from a consistent presence that manifests excellence in multiple dimensions. The final paradox Aristotle leaves us is profound. The search for pure moral virtue can paradoxically distance us from complete human excellence. The man who seeks only to be good in the restricted moral sense may fail to develop other dimensions of excellence that are equally important for a full life and for satisfying relationships. Aristotle teaches us that true wisdom lies in recognizing and integrating all dimensions of human nature. Genuine virtue doesn't deny our animal nature, but refines and directs it. It doesn't suppress desire, but channels it constructively. It doesn't reject power, but uses it wisely. Therefore, the truly Aristotelian man is neither the passive nice guy nor the destructive bad boy. He's the one who integrates strength and gentleness, assertiveness and consideration, thymos and sophia, wisdom, energia, and contemplation. He's the one who understands that human excellence is multidimensional and that true virtue includes the capacity to awaken admiration and desire, not just moral approval. Now, after exploring these two Aristotelian perspectives on the paradox of virtuous men, I leave you with a question for reflection. If Aristotle were alive today and observed modern relationships, do you think he would say our problem is excess of virtue, or that we're confusing disguised weakness with true virtue?